Let's talk about crafting and Lord of the Rings Online. So yes, crafting is optional, but I would really advise everybody to do some crafting and Lord of the Rings Online. There are a lot of benefits you get from crafting, like for example, you get better armor or gear just from crafting most of the time in comparison to what you get from quests. Now, I won't lie to you, if you're doing raiding and grouping stuff, yeah, that gear is most likely going to be better than what you can craft. But if you're someone who's doing a solo gameplay, you don't want to do a lot of grouping, then crafting gear is probably your best bet to get better items and just overall have a more enjoyable time, not always being so squishy. There's also the added benefit that even if you're gathering resources or maybe crafting a few things, you can always sell this in the auction hall, which is a really good way to get a lot of gold in the game, which you can buy houses with. You can afford your repair bill for when your armor is dented. You can buy special steeds when you get to certain rep areas or vendors that you can buy, only exclusive things that you get when you reach Kindred. There's a lot of things that you could obviously spend your money on in LOTRO, but crafting is probably going to be the easiest way. A little time consuming, yes, but it's probably the easiest way to get more gold over time in comparison to other methods. Now I'm going to go over the main tutorial with you all for crafting, just so you can get an idea of what the different vocations are and professions that you can kind of study in your crafting and what all you can do with crafting. So here I have stumbled across the crafting hall and comb. If you are doing the man tutorial through our chat, you will eventually make your way over to comb, but most of the time, no matter what tutorial or starting area you are in, when you get put into Middle Earth officially, you will find a crafting hall pretty early on in your game. It's pretty hard to miss, and with that you'll have a quest that'll eventually escort you there anyway if you pick it up. So either way, we found this in comb. I'll give you the map so you can kind of see the location. It's right by the stable master. But like I said, for man, you'll start in Archet and you'll make your way straight down into comb. And then from there in comb, it's off to the right, like you're going towards Chetwood. It's more east. So that's where one crafting hall is near the tutorials. Obviously, if you're like an elf, there's one in Keladim. If you're in Thorin's Hall, it's in Thorin's Hall. And if you're a hobbit, you'll find one in Meikle Delving. It's right by the stables. So there's definitely crafting halls, or at least crafting areas where you can start your tutorial. So let's go inside to see what we've got. Pretty much when you get inside, you're going to find someone with like an anvil icon above them. There's going to be two. Now the Master Crafting Guilds, this is for people who are pretty much going into a more advanced version of crafting. You get special recipes and stuff, but you're going to want to look for the Apprentice Crafter. So when you click on the Apprentice Crafter, they'll give you a list of professions that you can learn. Now, here's the fun part, going through all of the specifics of what you can learn. So you can be a cook, you can be a farmer, you can be a forester, jeweler, metalsmith, prospector, scholar, tailor, weaponsmith, or woodworker. And don't worry, I'm going to go through what those mean. So a cook, obviously you're making some food, you're doing the things. Cooks are definitely needed for having a lot of good food recipes, especially when you're raiding. That's something that a lot of people tend to gravitate towards because there's a lot of buffs and boosts that you can get from eating things. So cooks are able to do that. Farming, you're pretty much planting the crops, you're taking them out. It's actually a really easy way to get XP because you can literally go from like apprentice level to like the max level in farming, and it doesn't require anything but like a frick ton of coin because you got to pay a lot for the crops and stuff. But that is actually the easiest way to get a lot of XP because you can go from like 0 to 1,000 like within a couple of hours, but you can do it all in one sitting. But farmers pretty much are almost like gatherers, I guess, and we'll kind of go over that. But there are like gathering professions, which I'll get into it. Farming kind of is and it kind of isn't, but pretty much the only way farmers are going to get what they need out of things is if they also go in the cook profession, because the two go together. And there are a few crafting professions that work that way. Forester pretty much means that you're going around and you're gathering like wood resources, you're gathering leather, and they're pretty much really neck and neck with the tailor because the two together can make a lot of armor that's light or medium rating. So foresters are just gatherers for the wood and the hides, and they're able to pretty much process them, so then that way when the tailor gets them, they're all set and ready to go. And that's pretty much how that works there. Jewelers, they can make jewelry, and they are pretty good when it comes down to any class, because every class needs jewelry of some kind. They also have some other special recipes, so they can craft certain things like Lore Master pets, for example. There's just a few other goodies in there. But they're definitely needed for any class you go with, and they're pretty much a good option no matter what. Metalsmith is pretty much making armor for only heavy armor rated classes or people. So you can definitely sell this for maybe some money in the auction hall. It's not the best profession, but it's really much just gathering for people who have heavy armor classes. And then a prospector gathers ores and irons for that profession. So either for metalsmithing or another type of ore related profession. So they're like one of those gatherers again. And same thing with forester, they're like a gatherer for resources. Scholars pretty much are one of the easiest in terms of that they don't have like another pairing. Scholar, you can literally pick things up, and you can also like make stuff. It doesn't really matter. Like you don't need two different separate crafting professions. Scholar is like an all-in-one kind of rando nice to have profession. Scholars can make like potions, they make a lot of dyes, which can sell for hotcakes in the auction hall. They can also make like different buffs and stuff like that too for you, so it just kind of depends on what you're looking for. Tailors obviously make armor for light and medium armored characters. Weaponsmiths, which can make weapons for basically any class that can wield certain types of weapons, mostly like swords, hammers, that kind of thing, maces. But I will mention that weaponsmith isn't so much of a good choice anymore, because legendary items, once you get those at level 50, pretty much useless to have a weaponsmith at that point, because the legendary items are always going to top over what a weaponsmith can make. So just kind of keep that in mind too. And then finally, woodworker, which they can make wooden armored weapons and such. They can even make instruments for you like lutes and flutes, so it's kind of cool. But there are a lot of good things for woodworker, especially if you're like a hunter that can make bows for you, or even javelins, I believe. So not a half bad one either. So the gatherer classes are as follow. There is the farmer, forester, prospector, and scholar. And what I mean by that is that these are primarily people who are able to pick up things throughout their adventures that are probably going to benefit certain types of professions that I did not list. So for example, foresters, they pick up wood, but as a woodworker, you kind of need the wood like polished up and ready to go once you get it. So it's almost like this processing material phase. So as a forester, you can gather it, you can process it, but you can't make anything with it. You need to be a woodworker in order to make like the bows or the certain types of, spears or whatnot that you can kind of craft for your characters. So kind of think of it like 1 + 2 = 3. I don't think that made any sense, but it's pretty much like thinking like putting a puzzle piece together. You kind of need the two pieces to fit. And with forester, they can also process leathers, which leathers are good for tailors, and that's how you make armor for your light and medium classes. And then when it comes to prospector, they actually gather ore and iron for metalsmith and weaponsmith. So you do need to process ores, and when you're a metalsmith, you have to have those processed like ingots ready to go, and then only then could you make certain types of armor. And same thing with the tinker. They also need a prospector to process those ingots, those ores into ingots, and then from there they can make the jewelry. I hope that makes some sense, but pretty much the professions kind of work together depending on what you go for. Now the big question is, what do you go for? Well, that kind of depends on your class, if I'm being honest. So if you are a light or medium armored character, you're probably not going to go for metalsmith because they can only make heavy armor. So if you are someone who is looking for better gear and that's your primary purpose of crafting, I would definitely take a look at what your armor rating is. If you are a heavy level class in terms of your armor rating, that could be champions, guardians, brawlers, pretty much anything that has a lot of melee involved, more than likely you're going to have heavy armor. Therefore, I would recommend that you go for a prospector and metalsmith combo, because the prospector again gathers the materials turns the ores into ingots, and then from there the ingots can become armor that is suited for you. And then if you're a light or medium armored character, I would definitely recommend going with a tailor. But then yet again, when it comes to the gatherer, your tailor needs hides in order to make things, so you'll have to also become a forester as well, because the forester can pick up those materials, and then your tailor could then use those leathers after they've been processed and then use them towards making armor. So those are sort of the specifics I would start with. If you are going for trying for better gear, then definitely start with your armor, because that can kind of help you out with what you're going for. If you could care less about getting better armor and you just want to make coin, then I would definitely recommend going for a scholar for sure, because those dyes that you get later on, those are actually pretty vital for getting a lot of coin. A lot of people like dyes for their cosmetics. Definitely, like, black is like selling like hotcakes. My gosh, it's so good. I mean, I love like dark black in my soul armor. It's the best. But yeah, I would definitely recommend that. And then honestly, you could go for any of the other gatherers for resources, because that's something people often run out of. When you're running around, you need to pick up ores or wood, but you're only going to find that throughout Middle Earth. So you have to take time to do it. But if you're just naturally going to go through the gameplay and run through Middle Earth, just pick up some of the wood, pick up some of the ore, and then save it, and then just stack it, put it in the auction hall, and people will buy it, because people don't want to spend the time running around Middle Earth to go and get the materials. They want them now when they're crafting, right? So they'll pay pretty pennies in the auction hall for it. So if you want the most coin, scholar for sure, and then I would honestly just go with a forester and a prospector, because then, like I mentioned, you get all the ore, stack it, put it in the auction hall, sell like, I don't know, 50 ores for like some amount of silver or gold, and then you'll probably most likely have it get sold, because people don't want to have to run around and do all of that. If you're someone who's just honestly looking for XP and just overall wanting to have a decent time with getting experience, you could definitely go with a farmer and cook mix. Those are great for getting XP together. You can level up super fast with that. And then you will get a third profession for all of your characters. You'll have 3 professions right off the bat. So it's kind of up to you what you want the last one to be. But when it comes down to it, guys, you really should just have 2 that can intermingle and work together, and then like 1 random one run off. When it comes to crafting, you should definitely have like 2 that pair together, but then you always will probably have sort of like that one off where it just is kind of in the middle of like its own thing, and you're just kind of using it for coin at that point. So going off of what I've just mentioned, I am a minstrel. I am a light armored character, so I'm actually going to go for forester, because that I can gather hides with. And then after that, I can then go ahead and go for tailor, because I can use those hides to make armor. Now, something else that's really good for a minstrel is I'm also going to go for woodworker, because I can make my own loots. And guess what? A forester also can collect wood. So I pretty much am set for all 3. So I picked all those up, and you'll get introduction quests, and they'll show you how to do the crafting process. I'll just pick one up real quick.
Would you do something for me?
But it looks like I have to speak with my supplier, and he'll give me some things.
What can I do for you?
All right, so I just opened my box, and it looks like I got some ingredients in my inventory. Don't look at my inventory, it's a little mess. But you can tell most of the time what is crafting materials, because they'll be green in the box. So these are my crafting materials. So it looks like I have 2 light hides and 2 rowan wood. So it looks like with the ingredients I have, I'm going to have to craft brushed light leather and thin rowan board. So real quickly, something that's also needed to craft for most of the crafting professions is some sort of like workstation. So if you're going for a metalsmith, weaponsmith, whatever, if you're going to be using ore or ingots, you'll want to definitely go to a forge in order to craft that. For me, since I'm working with hides and wood, I'm going to go to a workbench and then definitely go through that. If you're a farmer, you're going to have to go to a farmland, which they have a few kind of scattered in different locations. And then if you're a cook, you're going to want to go over to the other section in this crafting hall and you're going to want to find an oven. And then for scholars, when you first start, you actually don't need any sort of workstation, but later on you will. You'll need a scholar study, which you can find in like the Brie crafting hall and other crafting halls. But anyway, I'm going to use a workbench because I need to be a forester right now. And it looks like I'm going to have to craft rowan wood. Big thing, you also need tools. So one thing that you should be gifted as well is you'll be gifted certain tools. So I have an axe, and then I also have woodworking tools, which I need to equip those when I'm doing certain things. So right now I'm just a forester, so I'm going to use my forester axe and go through and work on chopping some wood, I guess. All right, so I did that, and then I also need 1 brush light leather. All right, so this is sort of like the processing stage where I'm a forester and I'm processing the light leather, and then I'm going to, you know, make it better. All right, so now I gotta go turn that in.
Greetings.
And just like that, I know forestry. And then something else to note as well is that with your crafting, you'll get these trackers. So these are specifically with like the gatherer crafting professions. So again, that would be like farming, forestry, prospecting, or even scholars. They'll all have their own trackers. So this will help you with finding certain materials within Middle Earth. And you can see it on the map actually over here that it'll kind of like show you, it's almost like an axe with like an X over it, over a green dot, but that's how you know like there's a resource for you to mine up or gather. So I'm actually chopping down some branches. I'm gathering those, and then I can take those and then go back to the crafting hall like we just did and chop them down further, and then we'll make those into these thin rowan boards over here is what they'll get made into. And then only with these boards can I, as a woodworker, use these. And then same thing with the brushlight leathers over just the regular hides. The leather itself, I can actually only use that as a tailor. So that's sort of the processing that's important for certain professions. And then if you're like a prospector, you're going to gather ore, and then only when that turns into ingots can you use that towards certain crafting professions like a jeweler or a metalsmith. Really, the only other tips I have for you with crafting is to just gather resources. If you end up having way more resources than what you need, then you can sell them in the auction hall, no problem. If you are someone who is just looking for XP, definitely farming and cook is sort of a good way, an easy way, I would say, to get XP faster through cooking. If you want better gear, it really just depends on your item rating, and you know, if you can have certain gear types, whether that be light, medium, or heavy. And then of course, if you just are so confused and don't know what to do, I'll tell you this: go for prospector and tinker, because prospector and tinker are jewelers. They're needed for any class. You're gonna need jewelry at some point, no matter who you play, what you do, and you can't go wrong there. And the prospector is the gatherer for the jewelry, we'll say the ore to make the jewelry, the metals, and only then can you actually make the jewelry like properly. So those two pairings together, can't go wrong with those. And just overall, you will have 3 professions. It's sort of up to you what you would like to fill those 3 with. It's just kind of open-ended for whatever your personal preferences. And if you want more of a guide on like crafting guilds or just overall more like advanced crafting things, let me know down in the comments, because I'm still learning a lot myself, but I can relay what I've learned with you all. So, but I hope that this video was helpful, and until next time, you better stay weird, you weird weirdos.